To take you further into the framework agreement, we're joined by Paul Carroll. He's in San Francisco, California. He's also the director of programs at Ploughshares Fund, an organization that works to reduce nuclear weapons and global threats. I want to thank you for speaking with us. Let's start with Iran's foreign minister. We had the video just a moment ago, returning to a hero's welcome. Rouhani also delivering a televised address to his people, talking about this deal and saying that this kind of changes the framework, rather, a new page for international relations for Iran, if you will. Is he right on that?
Well, thanks for having me, Mike. I think the reaction we're seeing in the streets in Tehran upon Prime Minister Zarif's return is testament to two things. It's testament to how effective and how crushing these international sanctions have been over the last couple of years on Iran. Clearly, the Iranian people feel that relief is in sight. There's a light at the end of this tunnel. It's still a ways off, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for them. The second thing is, as one of your earlier reporters said, this does mark the beginning of a potentially new era in Middle East relationships, in perhaps U.S. engagement with Iran. I'm not saying friendship, but at least engagement with Iran to work on issues of mutual concern in the region.
You're talking about engagement, but there's also a lot of criticism. The critics really chiming in. Spoke to someone here in Washington today who used to work for former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. He feels like the U.S. got out-negotiated as they ran circles around him, he said. Some Republican lawmakers saying much the same thing. One senator saying former British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain got a better deal from Adolf Hitler at Munich. How do you manage this narrative if you're in the White House with all of these critics stepping up to the plate and teeing off on this framework agreement?
Well, I think what's really interesting over the last 36 hours since the details of this framework were announced is that it's important to categorize these critics, as you call them. I would say there are two kinds. There are skeptics that at their heart do have the security interests of the United States and Israel at heart. And they have been skeptical of this negotiation process and skeptical of a deal. But then you have outright opponents. You have people that will never want a deal. And in fact, they say they don't like the deal, but what they really don't want is any deal whatsoever. And the statement that you quoted from, I believe it was Senator Kirk, about Neville Chamberlain and invoking the appeasement of the 40s, it's interesting because even that same senator who has sponsored legislation that would lay on more sanctions and actually undermine the process has said that he doesn't envision.
Well, unfortunately, we lost Paul Carroll, our signal from San Francisco, but he was chiming in on the framework agreement from San Francisco.